welcome back, everybody. It is that every other Monday where me and my cast of misfits from the island of misfit toys hang out and babble incoherently at you for roughly 2 hours and waste a lot of your time. So thanks for showing up.
Wow, dude, that was fantastic. I want you to, can you like do an announcement for my show exactly like that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, and pew pew, because that's the best intro I got.
If I ever bed a lady, I want you to be the announcer. Like, and here comes the biggest disappointment of your life, standing at 5'11".
I'm there for you, man.
Thank you.
Color commentary all the way. Oh, he's trying to make his move. Oh, this one's bound to fail.
He has no money, no skills.
And thinks he can woo a girl. It's
Woo! Oh my goodness.
So Scepter is in here tonight. Cam is in here. Dreadpool swung by. I don't know if he's still here. He was in here pretty early, so he may be swinging back by. I'm sure there's a couple of people that'll be popping in. We'll be saying hi as everybody kind of comes in and hangs out. Thank you guys for coming in to spend time with us again. Oh, there's Zombie popping in. Awesome. I love to see Zombie around. It's good to see you, man. And
I gotta get the YouTube chat up. Sorry, I'm a little. It's as usual coming back from the gym and then jumping on this show. I'm a little behind the.
It's fine, man. I know how your routine goes on Mondays, so it's never a big deal.
No,
I'm just trying to keep us up to.
That's okay, because on Mondays, I need this show. So I am extreme, especially after today. It has been one interesting work day. So
mine was not too bad. And it was kind of easy rolling into it, despite all the emails, because I took some time off last week, which was nice. But let's go ahead and go around and kind of see what everybody's been into this week. Panda, I know you've been doing a lot of Master Debaters stuff. Feel free to promote that multiple times during the show because the show's awesome.
Thank you. Doing
the live stream with you last night, making fun of all their choices was a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, man, that was a lot of fun. So, as you know, I have been working on a lot of story content forever. It's still taking long. That's actually why I'm growing the beard back. And it's also why I have to shave my head again, because I actually checked the footage and I didn't get everything right.
One of these days you're going to shave your head. It's just not going to come back.
It's probably never going to come back. That is correct. But anyway, in the meantime, I've been trying to do some podcasts to help, just give some, something. And we had Nick on last night do a live Master Debater show where we took a look at episodes 1 and 2, gave our own takes. It was a lot of fun. You can go check that out. And then we've got Cyrus and DJC and Evercade Effect and other people on there. I don't want to give everything away, coming up soon too. So a lot of fun. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, the one last night was a blast. I thought we had a really good conversation between the two of us on a couple of topics and even managed to get a few points in that I think kind of went unmentioned by anybody that was on the panel from the first two, which is cool because it just adds more it's more data to that conversation and more points of interest, which is always a good thing because we didn't necessarily come to a different conclusion to anything. We differed slightly on certain things, like the importance of having a handheld and the listing and stuff like that, because what handhelds have kind of done over the years for gaming and just the sheer portability of it. So doing that was a lot of fun, and it was really fun.
It really was. It was nice to get that different perspective where we could kind of talk it out, pace things out a little bit, and get some of the chat involved too, and kind of hear some of their thoughts too. So
absolutely,
it was a lot of fun.
It was cool that you guys went live with that too. Unfortunately, I missed it.
Well, one of the things I want to try and do in the future, because unfortunately I need the polling. I think you have to have certain subscribers for polls because.
No, you don't.
Oh, you don't?
No, you just gotta have you just have the chat up, because I was doing it when I had like 100 subs. You just have the chat up. You hit the 3 little, I think if you hit the pips on the side, you can just, I know there's a way to do it.
Well, let's just put it this way, and then I'll shut up about this show. Because one of the main goals that I have set up with Master Debaters is that when it goes live, the idea was that I wanted at the end of the show for the chat to vote in who was the true Master Debater, and the losers I have these pre-made animations where the loser would fall into like fire pit, like Mortal Kombat. Name it. So it was like a gladiator audience where the chat gets to do this. So if I have chat functionality where I can do polls, dude, we'll do this again real soon. Like we'll actually do it. I'm ready to go. Hey, Born.
So
Hey,
Born's
Camaro.
popped in the chat.
Hey, Scepter.
So since you've been doing that, Mike, what have you been into?
What have I been into?
Espionage.
Yes.
I want something dramatic. Just
What the hell have I been doing this past week?
sleuthing.
Sleuthing. The hell am I? I honestly can't remember what I was doing this week.
Oh, apparently drugs is what you've been doing.
Yes.
All
I mean,
the drugs.
This weekend was extremely busy. I didn't get any gaming in. I mean, last week,
I know you had a bunch of real life stuff you were taking care of because you
Yes,
mentioned something
there
on
was-
Twitter about a car or something like that.
yeah,
I can't remember.
my oldest decided to, take care of us needing to buy a new car 6 months before we wanted to, and wrecked.
He's been into
wrecked my
grilling.
van. Well, I wish.
That is actually the most like that is perfect. Yes.
Actually, I did do fajitas on it tonight, but that's not what I did. I had to go. My oldest totaled my van on Wednesday in a very, very fluke, and I mean when I say fluke accident, it was the least damaging to anything other than the vehicle accident you could ever have. It was like the best case scenario if you're going to total something.
Can I just really quickly interrupt you? I just don't want to
Yeah.
forget that. Real fast. I will never forget as teenagers, my friend who just got his car we were driving. He was terrible at driving, and we're driving down this long road, and all of a sudden he sees these big two headlights or this big light. I couldn't remember, but he's going like, I can't tell. Is that like a van or is it like a
Or a train?
sports car? And I went, dude, who cares? Like it's coming our way. He's like, I don't know. I think it's like a sports car. It turned out it was an effing train.
It's coming
I just
Jesus.
Yeah. So
That's even worse.
look, I don't know, dude. I think it's a
it's a
sports
single
car
right. It's a single light.
with a hell of a horn.
What are we doing in this? What are we doing in this? Right. What are we doing in this tunnel? Right. Oh,
It reminds
Yeah.
me of this one comedian who was like
So.
from India. He goes, I think that's a car coming at us. And he goes, or it could be two guys on bikes carrying a mattress between the two of them. And he's like, you're right. That's a possibility.
no. So, long story short, he hit a culvert, which is one of those concrete tunnels underneath a road that, when water needs to get.
Okay.
He got stuck in a ditch. The wheel got stuck in a ditch. He tried to get it out. By the time and it just destroyed the right front of the car. So Saturday was going and buying a new car, which he will not be driving. And it was. I mean, in all honesty, the only thing he did wrong, and I say that
Was
very
drive
loosely.
blindfolded.
Yes, drunk with hookers in the back.
Okay.
But,
I didn't want to say, but yeah,
no,
that's true.
but
The only way to drive.
His GPS took him down a road.
He
that
needs a stogie to really complete that image. Otherwise,
Yes.
it's just not complete.
No, he really. His GPS took him down a road that, honestly, in my van, he shouldn't have been on, and he didn't hit another car. He didn't hit another person. It was like 10:30 at night. He did zero property damage to anybody. It was just a fluke. So
Yeah.
we went and bought
Well,
a car.
I'm happy
on
he's
Saturday.
okay. That's all.
And that's the other thing. He walked away from that completely
Yeah.
unharmed, shaken up, but completely unharmed. And I'm like,
That's
you know
good.
what? I can replace a van. I can't replace my son. So,
Yeah.
so I picked up a Kia Niro over the weekend, which is a great car. And then Sunday I had a band practice and last day of Sunday school. So I haven't played much. I'm trying to think if I didn't even play Jedi Survivor last week. I didn't get a chance. Oh, I did play some Ghost Recon Breakpoint with my friend Rick Lagnese from. He used to work for Warhorse Studios, but now he works for Extra Life. Him and me, and sometimes Peter will do some Breakpoint multiplayer, and so I did that. So I did get some gaming in.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So we do have a question on the board before I go into what I did. Panda, is it true that Man Machine's going to try to enter American Idol next season?
I think he saw my Twitter post where I've been pacing around the house writing a song for Man Machine called Death Bus.
I saw it.
I've got about 2 minutes of the song written, and I'm very excited. Because a million years ago, I wrote that he sings this song called Death Bus, but I never came up with a song. I'm like, God, now I got to actually come up with the song. So I've been just humming it around while Mike's been like putting out fires and saving his kid and all that stuff. I've just been like an idiot, just shuffling around the house, going Death Bus, just all I've been doing.
To the surprise of no one, this is what you've been doing.
Yeah, that's correct.
Cam says it sucks the total car, but as long as somebody got hurt, it's a hunk of
exactly. Nobody got it exactly. And this van, it was a 2009. It had 230,000 miles on it. We were gonna replace it after he went to college. He just 6 months early.
Right. Do cars with a titanium shell exist in this world? I think that would be way too expensive. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they do, but it's probably prohibitively expensive.
So, and Scepter, believe it or not, it was as close to an old dirt country. And it wasn't dirt, but it was as close to an old country road as you could get. It happened in front of an orchard, and the culvert was fine.
Yeah, Bidlock said a drunk hit T-boned him high school. He rolled all the way around back onto his wheels. Totaled his road runner. He kept going, jumped the ditch, and totaled his cutlass.
Damn.
Wow. Dear Lord. Well, I'm happy you're okay.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah, I had my own nasty accident that messed up my hip pretty bad. That I'm not going to go into tonight. But yeah, I took some time off last week. We went to a nice dinner and just decided to make a week of it. So I only worked like 2 days last week. And I was sick a lot of the weekend before that. So I was still kind of recovering from that on Monday. So I took Monday as a sick day. So I really only worked 1 day last week, which was pretty great. Just I was still kind of recovering most of the way through that week. Maybe it was all the Redfall I played. I did beat that game.
You beat Redfall?
Yeah, I beat Redfall.
How long was it? You said 12 hours?
I think if you just push through the story, it's probably 12 hours, but I did a bunch of the nests and all the side stuff that I could think of to do. I didn't get all the achievements and stuff on it because I just don't think I'm going to push that hard onto it, but I probably spent 25, 30 hours on it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, given the fact that I didn't spend any actual money on it, I got my money's worth out of it because it's just part of my subscription. If I had paid $70 for that, you can bet I would be singing a different tune.
My guess was always 7.5. Is that the rating you'd give it?
I'd say maybe a 6.5 to be honest. I actually quite like the story. I thought the story was actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think they could have told it with a little bit more animation rather than some of these kind of like moving animation stills that they had.
Right. Yeah, I heard people complain about that. Yeah.
And I didn't think it was a bad way to do it. It just didn't have as much impact, I don't feel like.
Right.
But the overarching story of like when you go through, because there's these enemies called Sin Eaters in the game, and when you kill them, they don't really attack you; they just run away because they don't want you to like see this part of the story. It's a weird enemy. But when you kill them, like this little sphere thing pops up. When you interact with that, it tells you part of the story. Well, each one of the bosses that you fight in the game kind of has like a backstory, and part of how you defeat them is you have to go through, figure out what their weakness is, which usually involves learning more about their backstory, which is kind of how they tell you how they went from like this person to like what they are now, right? And then you get this sort of like symbol, I guess, or emblem thing that you use along with something else in order to unlock the area to be able to fight them, so you can go in, have your fight, and beat them. And then that becomes basically almost like a talisman afterwards that you can equip on your character that gives you like different effects, which is a really cool idea. There's a lot of really neat ideas in the game. But what I struggle with, Sir X-Man's here. Hey man, how's it going? Good to see you. What I struggled with the most is I felt like a lot of the guns weren't very good. Like they're calling things an assault rifle, but it's more of an M1 Grand in its fire rate. It's a single fire rifle. And I'm like, this isn't an assault rifle. This is a rifle. is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, why are you classifying this as an assault? And some of the reload patterns and stuff I struggled with because if I had to move around because the vampires act a lot like zombies because they'll teleport around, but they generally like to get up close and then leap in and slash, and then they'll leap in and slash or just bite at you or something. And then the more advanced ones kind of become, oh, what's up, Master Gunham? Good to see you, man. Some of the others are bigger pains. Like there's some balance issues with some of them, like the angler ones that can kind of just draw you in. Once they grab you and start pulling you in, you get a chance to do like 1, maybe 2 shots at them, and then they do this unblockable attack, and it's almost impossible. You can't dodge their hook; they just grab you when you're in range, right? And that'll take about 2/3 of your life, regardless from max.
Right.
So it's not scaled to how much you have right now. So there's been times I've just been one-shot by these things because I was at half health. And it just insta-killed me. One glitch that got me is like one of the siphons because they can drain you from range and it'll do an effect. I saw that effect for like that long and I was dead. I never even saw the enemy. When I went back, in matter of fact, to try to hunt him down and kill him, couldn't find him. So I have no idea what happened there. I'm like, all right, that's weird. So there are a lot of some weird balance things and idiosyncrasies, but the boss fights I thought were pretty cool, creative. The story pretty fun. When you got the right guns, the gunplay was pretty good. But yeah, there's some broken stuff in there that I don't think will get addressed. Some of it, like some of the things are so niche with the way that they got broken. Like I'd come out of a nest and try to use my primary attack special, and it'd be broke for like 20 minutes. It wouldn't work. It wasn't on cooldown. It just wouldn't work. And since I had most of my points in that really sucked. I had most of my skill tree points in that. But it didn't happen all the time. So, yeah, don't pay money for that one. Just get Game Pass for like a month. And then don't spend money on it.
Have you did you buy Tears of the Kingdom?
I did. It's actually in my mailbox right now. I haven't had a chance to go and get
it. Oh, you
it.
haven't played it yet. Okay.
Yeah, it was supposed to arrive yesterday, and it got pushed back to today, so I think it's in my mailbox right now.
I am having literally the exact same experience as I did with Breath of the Wild, where I'm just waiting for that point where all of a sudden there's this eureka moment. I go, oh, I love this game now. Because the first time for the first few days of Breath of the Wild, I was like, boy, do I hate this game. I know for you, it kind of continued that way. But for me, I'm having a rough time with this one. I'm just waiting for that moment where I'm
kind of hoping I'll get that moment on there because Breath of the Wild, I struggled with that moment because it just, like, the pieces were there for a solid enough game. There was just so many minor little inkling things that it just wasn't clicking for me. But Immortal Phoenix Rising was basically the same game without those idiosyncrasies, and I enjoyed that one.
Right.
So it's just something to do with the way that they're handling that one. I'm hoping that the fusing and stuff like that kind of makes it a little bit better.
Everyone that I know who has hated Breath of the Wild has told me they love this one. So
and that's kind of why I grabbed it. It's because I saw a bunch of people that really just didn't. Breath of the Wild never clicked for them.
Yeah.
But this one did for whatever reason. I'm like, cool. Well, let me try that. I started.
I was just real fast. It has. I have this huge pet peeve of video game logic when you take a hero like Link and you start him off with no stamina, which I don't understand. That he can't even hold his breath as long as I can, and I'm not this fit warrior.
Even in the first game, your stamina felt like it was.
Exactly.
It's not as bad as it is in Phoenix. In Phoenix, when you use some of those abilities, it'll drain like a whole bar. Some of them would drain so much stamina.
Yeah, but this is just running. He can only run for about a quarter of a second, and then he's winded. And so this game kind of starts out the same way where you're just so limited. Yeah.
He's getting old.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm sorry, Nick. What were you going to say?
I was going to say I also started Metroid Prime Remastered, and that's been pretty much.
That game is gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, that's been a joy to play.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. So that's kind of what I've been doing. Our topic tonight is, and I see Bourne trying to push us into it because we're 20 minutes in, is Insta'Death mechanics. There's a couple of attacks we can take with this. We may hit all of them. We may hit a few of them. I know this was more Panda's brainchild. of a topic that he mentioned that he really wanted to cover. So I wanted to make sure we got to it and covered it. But I was thinking there's causes for it as far as earlier days of gaming. Was it more of a memory limitation? Is it more of they didn't want you to beat the game over a rental? Does it have its place in modern gaming? When and how? When's it a good thing? When's it a bad thing? That kind of thing. I know some people are going to say it's always a bad thing, but not necessarily. There's certain times I feel like there's an argument that can be made that it would work.
Well, that's the thing. What I've always wondered was, like, if you took away financial, if we could go back in time as an experiment, and we got rid of the idea of a quarter, you put in a quarter to play the game for X amount of time, etc. If we got rid of all that, what a game would look like today? Because you can see how it's like, okay, we made this arcade, we need to make money. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you amount of lives with an X amount of time limit that we can get our quarters, we can get our money. And so from that, consoles arguably took that same idea and carried over 3 lives, things like that. You have a certain amount of continues. And I've always just been curious, like, what games would look like had we not started with that financial limitation in arcade of here's how we can get money. Would it look different? If we didn't have rentals where, where you needed to, they'd make levels extra hard. That way, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like in Ninja Turtles, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If none of that existed, Battletoads, if none of that existed, what would games look like? Would it have been 3 lives, et cetera? So it's just a fascinating topic to me.
Yeah, well, I think part of it, and go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay. I feel like gaming has gone in a really different direction since those days, though. I mean, yeah, there's
of course.
There's still the Souls games that are supposed to be extra hard and stuff like that, but everything seems to be more about you just, in some cases, watching a story, and sometimes gameplay is starting to come secondary to the narrative, to the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are some games like that. Like, I want to say, was it Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain was almost more cutscene than it was game.
Yeah.
In that kind of case. And some of the games are like that. I mean, and some of the games are designed that way, like some of the FMV games that we've seen Panda play.
Oh, sure.
Those are meant to make a decision and then tell you part of a story, right? That's mm-hmm. what the game's about. So from those perspectives, I kind of get it. And some are all about the gameplay experience. Like Journey is all about just experiencing this world and the music that's in it. There's very little threat or challenge. There's almost no ways to really die in that game at all. So it's the complete other spectrum to things like, say, Hotline Miami, where you could pretty much almost insta-die in one hit, right? Mm-hmm. Cuphead at the harder difficulties or the right layout, you die in one hit.
Right.
And I think there's room for all of these kind of thought processes, or to even mix and match the two, depending on what you're trying to tell narratively, right? I think that's where we're at now. It's like, when you go back to the very beginning, yeah, you're looking at that arcade influence being carried over to the consoles in a lot of ways, right? Because that's how they knew how to design games. And initially what they're doing is they're porting those arcade experiences over. So they're not trying to retool it to make it more comfortable for a casual audience. It's just the game ported over to the new hardware. So you've got, tighter graphical limitations and things of that nature. But the core gameplay experience doesn't change to match the environment you're in now, right? And then some games were just built that way anyway, right? That's just how they wanted to build that experience, where you had one hit kill. Like Contra, I would imagine, was pretty much carryover from the arcade. One hit, you die. You go to the NES version, one hit, you die.
Yep.
Right? That's a direct correlation. Stuff like Ninja Gaiden would give you a life bar where you could take multiple hits. And so with Castlevania, but you also had Insta'Death in those too. Because if you got knocked back into a pit, it didn't reset you. It took that life. So you still had a life system on top of having like actual lives.
Well, right? A lot of the
so you had a life bar and lives, because there was cause to have both because of the type of experience they wanted to build.
And games continue to do that, at least through, and that's what I mean by such a difference now is I watched you. I remember when you were streaming, I watched you play Revenge of Shinobi.
Mhm.
And that was the same way. You had a life bar. You could make
Mhm.
it, but then you'd get knocked back and fall into the water, and then boom, you were out.
Right. And you
There
lose
was
a life.
plenty of times to insta die in those games. I think a lot of those games just kind of. I think when we got away from arcade experiences, I think is when all of this really started to shift out.
I would
Yeah.
say arguably, and Mike, tell me if I'm wrong on this. I would say that Halo actually was a gigantic like motivator of that. The idea of making a health system instead of like a regenerative armor, as opposed to, that's it. Here's your energy. It's gone. It's over. The idea that it's to keep you in the game, encourage cover, encourage that kind of combat. Like, that's where I would say I remember games really starting to change. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
So it's funny you mention that because I can't remember a game prior to Halo Combat Evolved that did that.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think like Halo is what for me stood out. Look, there may have been some game, that did it first.
I haven't done any
Right.
research to it,
But
that's the first
Halo
one
is
that
the
comes
one
to
that
my
stands
mind as
out.
well.
Yeah.
And in the first one, it only regenerated shields.
Right.
And you had a separate life bar.
Right.
By the second game, they had almost ditched the life bar, and it was just the shields. Once the shields popped, if you took another hit, you were done.
Yeah.
I gotta go back and look at Halo 2. To see
I think it's either Halo 2 or Halo 3. They got rid of the life bar entirely. Like at one point, they just ditched it.
I'll take a look.
Because once that dropped, it was considered like anything was a critical hit at that point.
Seth's
right?
been all over Halo lately, so I'll let him. He can honestly.
He could probably
he'll be
answer
able
it
to
in 1 second.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of comments here. Sir X-Men says he's kind of tired of open world games. He wants more linear experiences back, and I can't say he's wrong there. I think there needs to be more of a mix. I don't mind open world games, and I don't mind games where you need to go back and re-explore, like Metro Prime and stuff like that. Yeah. That's kind of the appeal of those kinds of games. I would like to see a mix of more stage linear driven experiences in the AAA scene, because in the indie scene, there's no shortage of those, right? Those are everywhere.
Yeah,
you get those all the time. You just don't get them in the AAA scene because they're too busy going, well, make your own fun. And I hate that phrase in games now because it just tells me that they're lazy with the story. If you tell me we want you to make your own fun, then you're telling me that you spent all your time trying to build this world for me, that you didn't have time to build me an actual story.
It took me a second because for a very quick second, and it's been that kind of day for me. I swear to God, I thought that read I want more lingerie games.
I did too, and I got very excited, and then the buzzkill.
And then the buzzkill.
It's misspelled just
finally,
enough. Just enough.
Brad says more. We're talking about right now is he thinks games will look more like board game influenced or tabletop war games, less penalty for perfect maneuvers, more PC route of exploration, incremental advancement, kind of like today's grinding or open world.
Well, that's
sooner.
I would have assumed that games would have started to look more like Dungeons and Dragons in the beginning had there not been arcades.
They actually started out more like Dungeons and Dragons. If you look at a lot of the early games, most of them are all on PC. They're almost all based on some methodology of D&D.
Well, that makes sense. Technology limitations, all text-based,
right?
And, using imagination to fill in the
and
blanks.
Stuff like that. It's easy to set up and design. You kind of make your avatar, you input the rule set, and you just work with the rule set, right?
Yep.
So,
but you had bars.
Even Myers was like lingerie games.
Yeah.
And he says, doesn't that make shields a life bar? Yeah, basically it does. It makes your shield the indicator of your life bar, except for the fact that when the shield pops, you still have one last hit you can take, right? You don't instantly die like you would if you hit the very end of a life bar.
But it also encourages kind of like a ballet type experience of almost like a dance of warfare, as lame as that sounds. But this idea of it's telling you, okay, look, my armor is about to go. It is encouraging you to duck under cover, do a little maneuver, shoot here, then get back into cover.
Right.
Like, it is making you do things where an energy bar is so sterile. that it's just kind of like one of those things that sometimes you may just not even know that you just got hit and now you're dead. I really like what Halo introduced. I like the idea of keeping you in the game as long as it possibly can. That encourages you to want to get better. It encourages you to learn the game a little bit better and stop seeing that game over screen and then just repeating the same level over and over and over again.
I don't even mind it when they remove that because Gears kind of does that. Uncharted kind of does that. Mm-hmm. You see, like on Gears, you see the gears start to get redder and show up more on the screen, right? That's sort of like your life bar, but not really.
Yeah.
Uncharted, the screen just starts to look different and the heartbeat races and things like that, right? So you can kind of tell when you're in trouble without really having a life bar per se, right? And I think those are cool ways of doing the same thing and not necessarily just pop and you're dead, right? But I feel like there's calls for like that. Like if you fall into certain pits, like Sir X Smith's talking about Tomb Raider, it gives you that kind of best of both worlds without taking it too far.
Is the other world the lingerie game? Because I agree.
Well, it is Tomb Raider.
That's what I'm saying.
So, but on that, you have like a life bar. You can take several hits, but if you fall into certain areas, pits, spikes, etc., stuff like that, that's just an instant death. Right. That's not a reset. That's just a game over.
Right.
And Mega Man works the same way. You got your life bar, but if you hit certain things like spikes or certain walls or things of that nature, you don't make it through an area. Like if the walls are coming together, that's it. You're compacted and you're dead. So having insta-kill mechanics, even in a game that doesn't have a life bar, I think, honestly, adds to some of the tension and skill level because it makes you think differently in certain scenarios than you would have to in others, right? So you can't just damage boost past something, which was a thing in Mega Man X. You could kind of take a hit and then get a couple steps because you'd have immunity for a little bit. It takes away that safety net and adds that layer of tension.
Right.
And Zerxman's like a miss dual wielding in Halo. Who wears their beard better between Panda and Mike?
Oh, Panda.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Panda on that one.
He's got the full all the way up. I just have the whatever the hell they call this. It's
not a goatee. Is that a goatee?
Well, I don't know if it is because I have the mustache too. I'm not sure what the hell they call it.
Okay.
Rav says it's not. He doesn't think it's lazy with the story. He just thinks that's their marketing team thinking that make your own fun sells us the game. It kind of has the opposite of me when you try to sell me a game based off of that. I sort of assume in an open world I can kind of goof off and have my own fun.
I think Tears of the Kingdom is a great example from what I've been watching of make your own fun. Like
I feel like there's a lot of it in there. Yeah, and that's what makes me nervous about it is because I'm not always big on crafting in games. I usually find it kind of an unnecessary evil that I have to deal with at times. Sometimes it makes sense. Most of the time, I'd rather not deal with it. Particularly, I'm usually not real big on crafting focused games, right? Where that's like your main thing. And that's what makes me nervous about Gears in general, is because it seems like it's kind of skirting that edge of being like primarily a crafting game first and a Zelda game second, right? Or third, mostly because it's more of a crafting game than an open world game than a Zelda game. Right? Because what they're doing with Zelda doesn't really feel like the Zelda that I know. I feel like you could blend the Zelda that I know with this, and it would be something even more special than people think it is now. Right? If you could mix more like weapon upgrades or ability upgrades, just gadgets for traversal and stuff, along with some of this open worldness that they have, and add some like dungeons that had more creative ways of climbing, etc., and all that, along with the gadgets to be able to navigate it, I think you'd have almost the perfect Zelda formula at that point, right? Because right now we're in this limbo spot where the open world people are happy with it, but they're going to get tired with it if they keep using the same map, right? And you're alienating the whole audience that got you to this point in Zelda to begin with. Right?
Well, look, it's hard to say right now. It's like the best-selling Zelda game of all time.
It is. It's sold 10 million copies in like 3 days or something like that. And it's selling all new consoles because people are buying the Pro controllers. Those are all sold out everywhere. People are buying the OLED consoles for it. So it's done great for like peripheral sales and new console sales just because people want that version of it. So game seems aimless and unfocused. That's because they focused on what sells it to us. I prefer a creative vision that we discover / fall in love with that. Yeah. I'm big on you giving me a gameplay loop that's engaging and drives me through the story and allows me a little bit of time to go off the beaten path and explore something and tell me your narrative. Tell me that deep story that you really wanted to tell me, right? Because I feel me and you, Hannah, are being on the same page with this. At this point in my life, while I like playing the games on normal, I'm bigger on the story than I am anything else.
Well, that's me.
If you don't have a good story to tell me, then why does this exist? Right? I mean, if you want to do that for me, give me an indie game that's more inexpensive that I can get in, and I have a quick, satisfying gameplay loop. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Give me something like Contra. Give me something like Ninja Gaiden.
Vampire
give me something
Survivor.
Yeah, give me something like that I can just get in, I can get my fix, and I can go. Right?
Yeah.
That's when you can pull the story back, because I know what I'm getting into with that game, right? I want my bite-sized, quick, adrenaline-focused fun. I want my hyper-focused fun. That's what I feel like a lot of the online multiplayer games are for. That's what your Call of Duty Online is for, and your Warzone and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's for somebody to get in, have a match, just blow stuff up, not have to worry about the story, get in, and just play the mechanics of the game, where the mechanics are king. And if you want that, that's great. But if you want to sell me on this grandiose scope of this world and stuff, then you need to have something that makes me engage with that world and want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've gone completely off topic, but that's okay. We do that anyway.
Yeah, that's fine.
No, it's fine, Vinny. Do your thing, man. I'm just glad you're here.
Yeah.
And Sir X-Men is saying that's why I like Kingdom of Amalur. I don't really have to do crafting. Right. So that explains why you guys slept on Tetris. Story snobs.
Well, he was more hard-hitting on Tetris than I am, Rad. If you remember,
I don't know. So technically, Tetris Connected has somewhat of a story.
Good point, Mike. Good
I
point.
haven't really dove too deep into that one. I need to do that one soon.
That is a fantastic.
I keep wanting to play it in
Tetris
VR,
game.
but it freaks me out in VR because I've got to use the controller and I've got the VR headset on, and it just feels off. Like
Well, the Tetris effect on VR, I love that game.
Oh, it looks great. Don't get me wrong. It's just
Even without it,
like playing it with a regular controller freaks me out, man. Like I just struggle with it.
You're bugging out, dude. You're bugging out.
Bugging out, man. Bugging out,
man. What I really love about that game, though, is the music.
What's up, Chuck?
Chuck.
The Murder Wall and Kid Chameleon. I don't think I ever made it as far as the Murder Wall, man. Kid Chameleon was kind of Insta'Death for me from like stage 1. That's a rough game to fall in love with. It's so hard. There's a lot of cool concepts going on in that game. Don't get me wrong, but
there's so much tood in that game. There's so much.
Dude, that's Genesis period. There's so much
nothing wrong with that
attitude in that whole system that some of that stuff struggles a little bit to be relatable later on. Not as bad as Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure really just went out there with the attitude for the era that I go back and watch it, and I'm like, oh, this is so cheesy. It's still a good game, but it's so cheesy.
Kid Chameleon, I love the game itself, but I do recall many times intentionally dying just because I hated the main character so much. It was so cringe to me. I just kept, you know what? I'm just going to keep offing myself just to give my emotional self some justice.
When you don't have him in an outfit, he reminds me a little bit of that dude from The Wizard. You know,
I'm so happy to save me
with the power glove. It's so bad. Well, you know, and you a little bit because you remind me of him a little bit. So
it's so bad. So bad.
Chuck's off doing stuff in the real world. Loser.
You know, like
having
Jenny,
a life.
No.
How dare you, sir?
Are you guys familiar with Jenny?
You?
The redhead in I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the redhead in The Wizard is Jenny Lewis. Like she's an amazing singer now. I don't know if you knew that.
I honestly have
I've been to a million of her
I've never
concerts.
sat all the way through The Wizard. I need to sit down and watch it.
Oh my God.
To sit down and watch it. It just looks like cheesy, hokey 80s fun to me, which is why I want to see it.
Which is why you want to or you don't want to see it?
No, it's why I want to see it. It's
then how have you only got through halfway of it, man?
I don't know. It's just I never caught that
bugging
movie
out?
for whatever reason. However, I've seen Over the Top with Stallone multiple times, and that's even worse, I think.
No, there's nothing wrong with that game. No, that movie rather.
That movie's so bad. That movie's awesome. So bad. I love it, but it's terrible.
Oh, come on.
The whole premise is dumb.
No. No.
See, Big Block's kind of in the same thing.
Yeah, but I think that's awesome.
Gravitated
Man.
more towards stories than strong challenges as he's aged, and
because you don't win. No, hold up, man. I'm sorry to interrupt, Nick. I just need to get this off my chest real quick. You don't. The problem, first of all, if you love arcade type challenges in your games, more power to you. I'm not knocking that, but for me, for the love of God, the problem with games like that is that getting good at it. What is your reward? Other than watching time of your life go by and then winning nothing, what are you getting from that? But you do gain something from a great story. You do gain something from great dialogue and experiences and something to think about from great storytelling and characters. That is something that you gain from like movies and television.
I think I can kind of answer this one a little bit. And I think it goes back to like stuff like Ninja Gaiden and Contra. It's just the challenge of it itself, right? It's knowing that you're not very good at something, but you're enjoying that kind of loop, right? You're enjoying the main.
Pick up a hammer and build a table is a much more productive challenge.
I'm just saying, like sometimes the game is just about the gameplay loop, and that's okay.
And more power to you.
And if you're enjoying the gameplay loop and you're enjoying going through the game, but Ninja Gaiden, in its defense, does tell you a story, right? I was thinking about this the other day because it's one of those things that, as we were talking the other day, it brought to mind. When did cutscenes really become a thing? And I want to say the NES is the first
Ninja Gaiden.
I really remember pushing that because Metroid did a good job of making things cinematic and feel atmospheric and kind of putting you in that setting and making you feel like you were there. Ninja Gaiden kind of took it a step further by not only making you feel like you're in the setting and playing a fast-paced ninja game because you need to move fast through that game, which is what kind of makes it satisfying when you get it working because everything starts to flow. Right? You kind of hit this flow state, which feels good when it works. When it gets off, it's just miserable. But the cutscenes that came with that told these parts of the story are unbelievable for that time. Right? And that's one of the earliest times I remember the game kind of stopping between stages and telling me a cohesive story. Right? Rather than just going, well, here's your starting dialogue. Have fun. We'll see you in about 30 hours. Right? Which is how most of them were, even if they had that, right? Metroid, I mean, it's sort of like, you see yourself come down, they do the music, and then it's dun, 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 dun. And it's iconic that you're just kind of lost in this world, and it feels very isolating and creepy, and you can definitely get the alien feel from it, right?
Sure.
But you don't get as much story as you got like when they went to Super Metroid. Super Metroid was so much better at that.
Oh, yeah, and that sold the mood.
Not even narratively telling you anything, but just focusing on certain things when you got to certain locations, right? And telling it without saying anything, right? So I feel like that was one of the big turning points, and I think that's when we really started to go away, to kind of wrap it back to the topic a little bit, to the insta-kills. Because the insta-kills are good for that arcade experience, right? And they're still prevalent in a lot of shooters. Because that's considered the skill level for like a shooter, right? Some of them will give you power-ups and it'll take away those power-ups first before it kills you. But a lot of them, just when you get hit, you're just done, right? There's no taking damage. There's no armor or anything like that. It's just one hit and you're done. And I think that just goes back to the roots of that kind of game and really what they want them to be.
RetroRoots.
Right?
RetroRoots. Nicely done.
And then Hotline Miami's kind of the same way. It's supposed to be kind of more of an isolinear, over-the-top kind of shooter, where it's just kind of a chaotic thing. And if you take damage, it's considered critical, right? It's kind of like getting a headshot in like Call of Duty or something like that. You expect that to be an insta-kill, right? Like when you get hit, and if somebody's got enough skill to hit you, particularly where you're jumping, like in the head, that should be rewarded with pretty much an insta-kill. Right? Or somebody manages to sneak up behind you with a knife and get a good hit with a knife. That's the risk reward for that is an instant kill, right? And that it sort of embarrasses the other player, but rewards the other player for the skill that they put into mastering that particular ability. A Bad Ox is another one. Yeah.
I never played that.
I thought I'll be all over that game. It was a Super Nintendo game, and I had no idea you were so bigoted against Nintendo until I was Master Debaters, and I'm like, jeez Louise.
Was that
Leave my Emoto
I thought that was.
alone.
Mike,
I thought.
I've
Leave
gotten
my Emoto
so
and
many
Gunback
comments.
alone.
So many dude, I just want you on every episode because that is actually what I love to see is just that heated, passionate. No one's crossing the line. It's all in good fun, but definitely heated. Like, what the hell is he talking about? It was great, man. The
there were
comments
times
about
I
you
just
were
kind
great.
of looked at the screen and I wanted to grab Mike and slap him a little bit. I'm like, I don't think you know what you're talking about right now.
My favorite
part. I do not think this word means what you think it means.
And I was also one of my favorite parts too, and this is by far not even the hottest take, was when you said, and Sony has no properties where they have what's God of War, that's it. But you had already talked about previously, like Uncharted.
I didn't say that.
That's what you said,
you
dude.
You
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I said they had no properties that were.
I've edited that thing 100 times. You said they have God of War.
I watched it, and even I kind of had this. What are you talking about?
I'm quite sure I mentioned Horizon.
Like Ratchet and Clank, who you were also talking about previously, didn't make the cut. It's just God of War.
Big Block. I'll be honest. I kind of want to order the Analog Duo. I waffled on it. Born sent me a link to it. I got a link in email about it, and I've kind of looked at it, and I kind of want it, but am I really going to go out and get TurboGrafx games for this thing? I kind of want it just so I could at least try to get a hold of some of the CD games. And I could probably get some stuff from like Side and stuff like that to be able to like use on it if I picked one up. But I don't know.
Was regular NES, by the way.
Do what? What was regular NES?
Abadox was regular NES.
Was it? I thought there was one on the Super Nintendo as well. That might be a different game. It had a guy with a banjo on it, but it was a shooter. It made no sense.
Wait, are you talking about Phalanx?
Banjo?
Oh, that's it, Phalanx.
Yeah.
That's right. I was thinking of a different game. That's on me.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, and Sir X-Men saying that's why he plays Battlefield, so he can get those kind of kills and things like that. Yeah, exactly. And Scrambles is done buying games now because he got Tears of the Kingdom.
Let me also say,
what's up, Jesse?
I have zero regret. My anti-Nintendo-ness, zero regret.
Made for a great show, dude.
Zero.
I loved it.
You had some good points, but you also had a bunch of just irrational ramblings that made no coherent sense in any known universe. Yeah.
No.
It was just like it can't be any good because it's got Nintendo's name on it. It just sucks. With like no rationale behind it.
There is no. I went back and watched that show too. There is absolutely no way. That is shit I did not say.
Language, Mike.
And then you were trying to get like every Xbox console on there like it was a holy grail. I'm like,
no, I didn't.
Nope.
I actually left out the 360 or the OG Xbox.
Remember, you can watch this Master Defenders episode.
Exactly. Go and watch it because this
they had to fight you on that.
This didn't happen because if I remember correctly, on that list of consoles,
If I straddle the line scepter, you mean he stood on that line and stabbed Nintendo repeatedly and then threw grenades over that line? You're correct.
I had both the NES and the SNES in the top 5 consoles. I did.
That was under duress. That was more Matthews than you.
Oh my god.
That was under duress. What? I'd love to see another Star Fox. Star Fox Zero was kind of a major disappointment for me. And I loved my Wii U, but Star Fox Zero was hard to love because
terrible game.
Oh god, it was mostly because it was so hard to play.
That's exactly why it was a terrible game.
Yeah, because I mean the aim, I'm having to look at this screen, but I have to fly my ship on this screen. I'm like, how do I do this? Like, how do I mechanically do this?
The whole idea behind it, like, God bless, I love kind of unique ideas like that, but they had it all wrong. Like you have your great 50+ inch TV that you want to enjoy. And you're forcing them on this little tablet, making this huge TV completely useless. The whole thing was backwards.
Honestly, the one time I thought that worked is when you had those little probe robot things where you had to go through areas. That made total sense to use the smaller screen for that. I'm like, no, this is a smart use of this, but making me do this during the middle of combat so that I can aim, is not good, particularly when you're in a dogfight with like Wolf and his whole crew, and you're trying to dodge meteors and missiles and them and still aim. It was just too much, dude. I don't think I ever finished that game just because I started getting a headache trying to keep track of both screens. It was the one time I looked at the Wii U and I looked at Nintendo and went, what the hell?
Yeah, no, that is.
I've been on board with the Wii U concept, but what the hell?
I'm actually in the middle. That's one of the episodes I'm working on right now for the story content is Star Fox Zero, and that game for me was just a complete disaster.
Yeah, because the original Star Fox and Star Fox 64 are both stellar games. Those are epic
100%,
games.
100%.
Another 1080 snowboard. They could get back into some more fun sports games. I feel like there's a good place for those on Nintendo. Like doing serious sports games with high fidelity isn't really their niche. But when you've got stuff like Blood Hockey on the Nintendo, which I still need to pick up, which is like the old ice hockey, only you can like kill people. That just tickles my fancy. We need to bring back Mutant League football and stuff like that for there too.
Agreed. Real fast. Just real fast about Star Fox. How you could have, in my opinion, made Star Fox Zero fantastic is what you did with Mario Kart. You give the idea that it's a 2-player cockpit. So your friend can use the gamepad and be like the turret on your ship. That way, then the other
person's flying with a different controller.
And then you go, bingo, now this is so much fun. It's encouraging people to want to play it. Like, to me, that would have nailed it. But to make it the first player that's doing it, it kills it.
But if you were playing single player, I feel like especially when you're in the starfights, all that action needed to happen on the main screen, right? Mm-hmm. If you had a second player, they can take over as like the gunner. And then that works great. But other than that, you need to narrow the focus down to one screen or the other. And
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. To me, I would have used the gamepad as a bonus.
Yes.
It is a fun bonus.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not the main thing.
Carla! So yeah, absolutely. I think that would have been a great way because then that person couldn't necessarily die. They could just shoot everything. And then the other
Nintendo, you can hire me.
Trying to get the heck out of the way.
I come cheap. I'm like either $5 or a bag of Cheetos. Either one.
Yeah,
you can hire me.
Yeah, you could give him one Cheeto. It's fine. You can ration.
That'll also work.
All kidding aside, I can't think of a video game system. You know what? Anything Nintendo.
Are you kidding?
No, hold on. Wait a minute.
I love you, but I can name all of Nintendo. All of Sony, all of anything that is not Sega or Microsoft. Dude, boot him off. Boot him off. Don't let him make his point. Just boot him off. Boot him off. Yeah. So anyway, back to crapping on Mike.
When you love Nintendo.
I hate Nintendo so much. All things Nintendo.
I could see the layer of dust.
I'm the one who likes the N64. I had to battle Matthews about the N64.
Hey, I got it on the list, sir. It was not a hard sell to Panda though.
I had to battle him for that.
I had people fight me trying to get that thing off of there when we were doing that live. And I'm like, no.
No,
I'm like, that analog stick is a good ad, man.
In the day, I was an absolute Sega fanboy. I don't hide that. I never hide that. However, as I got older and grew out of that crap, I had an N64.
To go get a Switch.
Nope.
Mike, I thought your hot take on that first show was fantastic, but then Nick had his, and that was the winner. Nick came in like guns blazing, didn't care that his whole channel was about to get nuked. You want to repeat your Nick? Why don't you repeat your?
Yeah, no. My hot take was that Atari was a pile of hot garbage, and that the world would have been fine without it.
Yeah, and that there would have been no innovations had it just gone away. That it was just basically a useless pile of crap. Then I went like, wow, okay, that might be the winner.
I kind of went into that one knowing that I could go back on it later because I knew the way you did that. I'm like, so I could make an argument for this, and I can also make an argument against this because there's a legitimate argument to be said that we would have gotten to the same place in the industry without Atari. We just got there faster, right? But it's easier to make the argument that Atari definitely sped things up, even if it wasn't like mission critical to where we were going. It definitely helped make everything get there smoother, right?
Excuse me. Mm-hmm.
And they did do a lot of crazy stuff that was sort of innovative and unique. Most of it failed, but it was still cool. And I can say the same thing about Nintendo. They're always good for throwing out a really crazy, sometimes stupid idea.
Yeah.
And you look at it and go, this is really fun, but this is also really, really dumb.
Yeah.
I look. So this is here's an E3 story for you. The year that they had actually announced the Wii, when it was no longer the Nintendo Revolution, and they announced the name and everything like that. I remember I had taken 3 people to E3 with me that year to cover it for NLG, and one of them was my Nintendo guy, Sean, who went. It was like this was his year. Like he was gonna be in all of his glory.
Did you fire him?
No. He got back from the Nintendo press conference, and we had all gotten the press release, so we'd all seen it, all seen the name. I got to see clips, and we were all sitting in a diner outside of our hotel, just looking at each other going, what were they thinking? Who was on drugs at the time to who in the boardroom went, we need to call this thing the Wii, and didn't get thrown out the window like in that meme.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I thought their ad campaign was brilliant.
It was, and
it made sense when they started doing the ad campaign. It was brilliant.
Would like to play.
Yeah, and then the Wiimotes basically being the 2 eyes. I'm like, this is a brilliant ad campaign. It's one of those things where when you initially see the name, you think, okay, this is dumb. And then when you see the ad campaign that went behind it, you're like, okay, this is really, really smart.
Yeah.
Where they messed up was when they did the Wii U, because everybody thought it was a tablet attachment.
Everybody thought that it was.
Everybody thought it was a tablet attachment.
Yep.
And honestly, I was one of the few people that actually enjoyed the Wii and enjoyed the Wii U. I thought they both had enough titles in and of their own right that they were totally worth the price of admission. I mean, I didn't have as many. I've got a pretty small Wii library in the scheme of things, but I mean, there's like a Zack and Dax game. That's Zack and Wiki, I think is what it's called. Mm-hmm. And it's like a puzzle. It's a point and click puzzle adventure game that's just really cute and clever, right? So there's games like that. There's all sorts of light gun games and stuff that you could do with it. Link's crossbow training is phenomenal to boot up and play.
And it had that great accessory.
Yeah, because it feels like you're actually playing a light gun game when you haven't been able to play light gun games in ages, right? It was another way of doing that. So there's a lot of really cool stuff and cool ideas and being able to turn the controller sideways and stuff. What I didn't like was all the extra attachments like the Pro controller and then the arcade stick and having to have this thing like a tail to it. And it just got kludgy and weird that way. Mm-hmm. So I thought they could have done something better that way. But I think I would still defend that there's enough games in there and a bunch of them that I didn't even explore that were on the Wii and the Wii U that make both those consoles worthwhile and worth collecting for, even if you just have a small library, right? At this point, I would just get a Wii U and pick up Wii games and Wii U games.
That we have a Wii in the house. I mean, we've had one for forever. I would like to get a Wii U just to be able to get the Wii U games and stuff. I'd still be able to play. Now, is the Wii U also GameCube compatible?
No.
Okay.
The Wii is GameCube compatible,
which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather have a GameCube than play the Wii games.
Well, and this
GameCube
one
games on the Wii. Honestly.
So I actually have the one that I have has the AV out, the digital AV out. Yeah, so they do make a really good HDMI cable for this. That is more than just an analog to HDMI converter. So it's about $120, but I think it might be worth it.
Because that's what I use.
I think it is the Eon.
Yeah, dude, it's amazing if that's what it is.
Yeah, see, Rav's in the same boat. He says the Wii has 300 games worth of admission. It's as good a library as almost any. It's just a lot of shovelware. But and everybody always complained that the Wii had too much shovelware, but any popular console,
that's it,
has a ton of shovelware.
Well,
the DS had a ton of shovelware. The PS2 had a ton of shovelware. Any console that gets really popular and sells a ton gets a ton of shovelware.
Headset went out.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got stuff like, Pets, Cats Edition, Dog Edition, Goldfish Edition. There's a lot of just stuff out there that's not really a game.
I can't hear a thing Nick is saying.
Can you hear me?
Dangerous thing. Hang on one sec.
Okay.
It's a dangerous thing when you can't hear me.
Hang on.
Well, anyway, we should probably at some point get back on topic, I'd imagine,
guys.
right? And that topic is let's make fun of Mike. Oh, wait, did Nick freeze? Am I the only? I think Nick froze. Oh, no. But Mike, you're still there.
There we go.
He froze.
All right, I'm here.
Okay, froze. You can hear me, but Nick is gone.
Well, now you're about a second behind.
Oh, me? I'm delayed.
A little bit. Now, wait.
There we go. All right, StreamYard's being StreamYard's.
Maybe it wasn't me after all.
I think it's just StreamYard's losing its mind.
I'd forgotten what I was saying.
I don't know. We've been on and off topic, and I knew tonight would just be kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because there's so much I could do with the Insta'Death topic, and I was really struggling to research it because I wanted to have a lot of really good points to talk about on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and nobody's talking about it other than this game has it and this game doesn't have it. Nobody's really done a lot of, I want to say, research as to what influenced those decisions. If it was just the arcade, if it was just rentals, if it was intentional in certain games. I think modern day, definitely. But I'm talking as things kind of grew in through the industry, right?
I just think, and for me too, like look, here's what I'm going to say. If you're going to do Insta'Death, then dude, have the balls and do Insta'Death. It should be you buy a game, and if you die, that game terminates itself. The end. You can't play it anymore. Like, let's do this properly. Otherwise, to me, it is an outdated philosophy, in my opinion, because it doesn't encourage anything. It's just you get to a certain point, you die, restart. There isn't any game in the world that's like that. You know, if you're losing a little bit in basketball, you get to keep playing and getting better, and you get to keep trying, and you're encouraged to keep going instead of, well, you had you missed 3 shots, you're out. It's over.
I can think of one instance where this kind of works, and it goes back to certain shooters, because in some of the shooters, if you don't get reset back to the beginning of the level when you die, you can't get those power-ups to be able to make it through the level. So you just end up dying over and over and over again because you don't have enough damage output to handle what's coming up in that point in the level. Because I've seen Matthews argue that point, that he liked that kind of like insta-die, go back to the beginning kind of thing, rather than losing all your power-ups, because then you're so weak at some point that you just can't progress.
Right.
And so checkpoints and things like that don't necessarily work in that kind of game. So I think in those kinds of games, it's kind of a saving grace. But in a lot of games, yeah, a lot of times it feels like an outmoded concept. And sorry I have to do this. Jim! It's good to see you, man.
What's up, Jim? Jim,
yeah, no, if
hasn't followed you back on
2 or 3 hit points then. And Born is raging.
I just think personally, well, let me be very clear. First off, if you love those types of games, I really want them to keep making those games for you. Like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I believe they're kind of outdated, though. A game philosophy of, that you have X amount and then it resets, to me, is not creative. There should be things that encourage you to keep being in the game, being invested in the game, keep trekking forward, which is why I liked what Halo did. That regenerative armor really encouraged you while you were losing to start very actively, quickly changing your strategy. It encouraged that. Where just hit points, 3 hit points, you're out, done, restart, is I don't know. It's very sterile, cold, and I don't know.
I think it depends on what you're going for, because there's a couple.
100%.
There's a couple of modern examples, like say something along the lines of like Super Hot, which is a VR game, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you mess up on that and you get hit, it's considered like a death kill, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to restart. It's considered. They almost treat it. It's got a darker story, an underlying story on it, but it's treated almost like a simulation, right? You have to be able to execute this flawlessly. If you don't, it resets, and you have to do it from the
But
beginning.
death is
You can't
part of the
execute it
learning
flawlessly.
process in that.
Yes.
So I'm totally for that. Like it's used in creatively in the idea of the game. So like that.
Right. So that's what I mean. There's a case to be made where an Insta'Death makes sense from the narrative and the
100%.
story, like getting knocked into a pit. You're not going to survive a 20, 30-foot fall. You're generally going to die. Any game that has fall damage, once you fall to a certain point, it doesn't matter if you have a life bar or not, you're still dead. Right? Or if you do something like Outer Worlds, where it's actually kind of creative, where if you survive enough falls that are of enough height, you can actually get a fear of heights is like a detriment, and you can add a perk somewhere else, which I think is a cool way of dealing with something like that, right? When it doesn't necessarily kill you. So stuff like that.
Like Sands of Time.
And see, Justice kind of another point. Like Cuphead is another one of those where you can die super fast. But the art style, the way the game moves, the way the game plays, how it feels just fair enough, right? To keep you pushing at it. Keeps you playing the game.
So for a guy like me, no, I absolutely hate that game, but I get it. Again, if you just love challenge, I totally get Cuphead. Again, I'm not knocking any of these games. I think everyone should get the game they want. For me, I like Braid, and like Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, where the idea was you had that rewind mechanism,
right?
And that again, like it's keeping you in the game. It's and allowing you to make those mistakes, but keep moving forward. And I love that.
Yeah, and Jim says he's not sure if we've already discussed it, but games like Celeste and Super Meat Boy, which we haven't brought
Celeste is great.
Both of well, because the instant kill mechanic. They have an instant mechanic, but it's not a huge setback because you're thrown right back in to try again.
Yeah.
Yes, immediately.
I'm trying to remember if
Celeste?
Explosion Man also had insta kill.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
And apparently Megadan NDR Cuphead. That does not surprise me. I was just happy to beat that game. I beat that legit on normal. I was happy enough.
And I thought it was a brilliant game.
I still want to go back and give some of the Souls games a better shot. I mean, I done 40 hours into Demon Souls, and I feel like if I were to talk to somebody, they're like, well, you haven't really started the game yet. I generally tend to laugh at those people. But Redfall was another one I wanted to laugh at people. They're like, well, you've only played 10 hours of the game. You're just doing the tutorial. And I'm like, wait, I've heard people say you could beat this whole game in 12 hours, and you're telling me 10 hours is a tutorial? This game doesn't need a 10-hour tutorial. It's shoot zombies, stab with stake. Or shoot vampires, stab with stake. Shoot human till dead. That's it. That's your loop. This is not complicated, okay? I don't need a 10-hour tutorial.
I
think I got it.
I thought Cuphead was a brilliant game for like you take a Mr. Matthews. Like, I'm so happy that a game like that exists for Mr. Matthews. Like, he loves that kind of challenge, that idea of a boss run. I think it's a brilliant concept. Yeah, it's not for me, but I get it.
I'm normally not the person to jump into a game like that, but I pushed myself to play it. And part of the reason I pushed myself to play it and stick with it, and I had to do it in short stints, because if I finished a stage, I was pretty much done for the day. Right? Yeah. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go play something else and calm down a little bit. Because there was as much cursing as there was cheering and cheering when I completed a stage in that game. Because it's that kind of game. But just how cleanly it played, how tight the gameplay was, how beautiful the game was, kept me coming back to it. I still haven't done the expansion content, because my concern is I have to go back and play the entirety of the game again, the original game, so
to get
the skill level back to be able to play the expansion, because the expansion's harder. I've watched people play it. It's absolutely harder than the original game.
There is nothing better in life than those expansion things that happened. They've been happening a lot in open world games, like with Horizon. Like a year later, you get this expansion, and I always love it because Here you were just fighting, a year ago you were fighting dinosaurs, jumping, doing all this cool stuff. And now I just kept falling off of cliffs, forgetting how to just pull the arrow out. And I would just like run into walls and just like, it was just terrible at it because it's been so long.
Yeah. And I feel that way. Like, I feel like Contra, I can get back up to speed faster than
that's like more reflex.
Right? Like, I can at least make it through the first couple of stages. I can probably make it to stage 4, stage 5 with like 3 lives, and then I'll start to struggle with the later stages, right? And but eventually I'll get back in the swing of it, and it's fine. And Ninja Gaiden, I can mostly pick up and make it through most of the stages till I get to like 5-2, and that's where I start flubbing up normally, and that's fine. Like, Cuphead's a different animal, right? It's just a different animal.
I'll be right back.
And Jim's like, Souls-like games don't really have much of a tutorial. It's just kind of a learn from failure kind of thing. And a lot of early games are that way, and that's kind of what they're modeled after.
Dark Souls 3 was exactly like that.
Yeah.
And that's what pushed me away, because I got Dark Souls 3. I was like, it looks great. It can't be that hard. Oh yeah, it is. Cuphead is also very, very tough.
Yeah, but those are brutal in different ways, right? Cuphead was fast enough, actiony enough and the stages were short enough that I always felt like I could almost get there. Demon Souls, especially Demon Souls, feels like it's kind of like roll attack, roll attack, roll attack. And I know that's a lot of action games, particularly ones that are sword focused or bow focused rather than guns, because you don't have that range that you play with as much. You have to be there and you have to learn to dodge and block and parry and all that. So I get that that's part of it, but something about that, and it might have been because I was running like a knight and he rolls really slow, that it just felt kind of ponderous and just very, very slow and monotonous.
Oh, that's my issue.
That I struggled to engage with it on a level where I felt like I really wanted to push.
That's kind of my issue with it, is that it's slow, it's monotonous, and in the end, with the exception of games like Elden Ring, which I still haven't played yet either, but people have said that's kind of the most accessible Souls game you could get.
I've been told to do Bloodborne first.
I've heard
most people who are like Souls aficionados go play Bloodborne, learn to parry because you don't really use a shield in Bloodborne, and then go back and play the Souls game, play the other games.
I guess maybe Bloodborne is kind of like the tutorial for a Souls game.
Apparently, they were training you the wrong way to play the game from the beginning, but the person I learned that from was, and this was before I knew anybody who had any beef with him, was H-Bomber Guy, because he had like an hour and a half deep dive into how the way they initially train you to play Demon Souls and Dark Souls is they give you a shield, which is like the last thing you need to be using in the game. You need to be dodging or parrying, not blocking, right? And Bloodborne does that differently because they ditch the shield, right? And so it teaches you better how to play those types of games by removing that as a crutch because you can't use it, right? And I'm like, well, this makes sense in a way.
I think,
and see, Jim, there's Jim saying the same thing. Bloodborne's what made him fall in love with the Souls formula, right there.
Maybe I started with the wrong game. Hey, brother, back. I mean,
I think if you're going to do insta kill, then if you're not going to do the ballsy one where your game just self-destructs, then I would like it to be a game called like Amnesia Boy. And basically, what happens is every time you die, your controls randomly switch on you. So like jump is now select and moving forward is A, and you keep trying every time you die, like, oh well, now I got to reset everything, but the game keeps changing the controls on you. Let's do something ballsy. If you're gonna do insta kill, then my point is insta kill doesn't work if I just reset and play it over again. Then it's just annoying. Do something innovative, do something creative, better than Amnesia Boy, but with your just do something unique with that idea. Otherwise, it's just hitting reset, and that's just boring to me. You know what I mean? Because then you're just
I feel like there's an argument to be made here. As much as I know you're just kind of like taking the piss, I feel like there's a
but I'm trying to make a point.
I'm not sure he is.
Yeah, I'm pretty actually kind of believing my own crap right here.
Honestly, I feel like there's an argument to be made here that like you you either lose certain skills and get other skills when you die, making you adapt to a new gameplay style. Like you got hit and all of a sudden you forgot something, but something else got jogged in your memory while you're doing it, right? So it changes the gameplay experience. And you're playing somebody who has a level of either amnesia or brain damage or something going on, right? It could be like the Fern Gully's series, the whole Fern Gully experience where they didn't like what channel that Robin Williams' back character was on, so they just kept slapping the antenna until they got the right channel.
It's funny. A while back, I think I had mentioned this before, but I've actually made a game before, and I was working on my second game. It did poorly, by the way, but I was working on my second game, and that second game had a insta-kill kind of idea to it, that basically, if you died, you could make a deal with a devil-type character that would be something like, okay, you can keep your loot if I have control over your photos. And so it would like, if you would say yes, it would just like pick a random photo and delete it. But Apple didn't allow that. So my whole concept went to hell. But I was like, I like the idea of like actually having an actual real world downside to losing, an actual stake. Because if you're going to do that, I want to see something other than just hitting reset. That to me is just
honestly,
not
there's a couple of games that do
but-
something kind of interesting with the one-hit kill thing that's kind of along the lines of what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, like it should send your
no.
nudes to somebody.
Well, no, I mean like one is game ground, right? You get hit, that character is now captured initially, right?
Mhm.
So you have to bring another character, which you may not be as proficient in, onto the stage.
Mhm.
And if you can escape out through that section, you can reuse that character again. Right? So it's kind of a one-hit kill, but that character's not necessarily dead, but you have to be flexible and be able to use it as the character, right? And then there's games like Broforce that also has insta-kill. But the funny part and what makes that game so fun, other than just the sheer chaos of it, is when you die, you come back in as another like uber bro hero. You know, sometimes it's like Ridley, sometimes it's Blade, sometimes it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, sometimes it's just a straight up Terminator. But you don't know what you're going to get when you die, right?
Okay.
You have to adapt to the new play style when you respawn because you're not going to be the same guy again.
Let me one up you. I like the idea. You build up a character, and if you die, that character is randomly sent to someone else online that now gets to keep your character, and you're in purgatory and only can watch them screw up your character. I like that idea better.
I'm trying to come up with fun examples of people using an Insta'Death of doing this, and you're just kind of killing my high, sir.
Yeah. I mean,
I feel like there's some good ideas on the table, sir.
You do understand that video games are supposed to be a break from reality. It's not supposed to be if you die in the game, you die in real life. That's not how this is supposed to work.
Then don't that. But my point is, it's a larger point. Then get rid of this dumb idea of dying in a game. It is stupid. If you can reset, you're not dying. When we die, we don't get to do something again. So I'm saying these people need to start thinking a little outside the box and move outside of this idea of dying as a game mechanic.
You don't
It's
respawn
boring.
when
It's
you die?
tried. It's dull.
What? That's how I get home in the afternoon.
But again, it's not reality. So think of it like the movie. What was that?
We're not disagreeing. I'm just saying
I
I'm encouraging some. I would like to see a little bit more innovation and getting outside of this idea of death as a means to want to move forward, right? As a reason to not lose is dying, because dying, then you just reset.
Reb says that you've
Right,
licensed that Panda's licensed the monkey's paw to make it into a game. Okay, you get your second life, but you'll pay in horrible ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked it. Your phone will make AI photos of you sleeping with someone else's wife, and then it will just email it out to your friends list.
Here's I think. Well, so maybe what if? Because I mean, it could be. What if that Insta'Death simply brought you back to the title screen no matter what game you were playing? You couldn't, there are no saves, you can get 40,
Isn't that what Insta'Death is?
I was going to say, there's already games that basically do that.
Yeah.
Right, but what I mean is, but you could still do game saves, and you could do, so you die, you get that one hit death, but you could start at a checkpoint, yada yada yada.
Oh no, I know
checklist.
there's some instant game. No, it is over. It's done. Dunsky. You go right from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's
Myers
more like
brings
maybe-
up another one, Mummy Demaster, which I've only seen a couple times, but it was a cool idea. When you die, you respawn as a new soldier, and you can go kill your old zombified
That's like
soldier to
Zombie
get your
U.
stuff back.
Zombie U
Yeah.
did that, right?
I don't know. I never messed with Zombie U.
If not, it's pretty familiar. I think if you die, you become a zombie, and then I think you can go back and get your something like that. But that's a cool idea. That's a cool idea.
Serious Man thinks it sounds like you're talking about PUBG. or
You can't
Fortnite.
die in most sports games, says Amazing. And that's where I think you
Hey,
should.
Blood Hockey fixed that, sir. So did Mutant League Football.
Right. Yes. Oh my god.
Flappy Bird. That bird dies when he hits that pipe. I don't know how to tell you, sir. Does Panda prefer hardcore mode in Diablo games? I'm guessing no.
Yeah, no, I just, like I said, I just think, look, I'm the hippie of the panel. I'm the artsy fartsy guy. And I just think if you're going to make an insta-kill game, then for the love of God, do something creative with it. Do something fun with it. Otherwise, it is just hitting the reset button. And if that is the case, it is a waste of everyone's time.
I don't think it's often used very much anymore. I think there's a couple of games where they do it either specifically for just the challenge, and then it's all about the gameplay loop and the challenge, right? And that's it. But I think most other games have adopted either like taking a little bit of life or resetting you here or resetting you there, that kind of thing, to where it's kind of less of an obtrusive thing these days. I think like overall the industry's kind of moved away from that for the most, except for games like, say, Fire Emblem with no respawn. Like Fire Emblem is one of those games where, and I kind of like it in Fire Emblem, where if you lose a character, that character's done. Like they're gone. So if you have a character you like, you either end up restarting the stage if you make a big flub up, right? Because most of this is in your control. If you make mistakes, sometimes crit happens and you die. That happens. But most of the time you've got enough lead and forethought that if you're playing the map the way you should, you're probably not going to lose anybody, right? So I feel like having that kind of risk of not being able to get that character back is kind of an incentive to play smarter. Right.
Sure.
Now it doesn't game over, and you don't go reset if you lose that character. You can still continue through the campaign, but if you lose too many of your stronger characters, you're going to struggle in the late game, right? Or you end up restarting the game because you've made too many mistakes, and now all your heavy hitters that have your good rolls or all your good gear are now dead. And how are you going to manage to complete the campaign? You're just not, right?
Right.
So it makes you think more carefully about how you're doing. And in a strategy RPG like that, I feel like that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. I enjoy the ones that don't do that, but I think it's a good mechanic to play around with in those. But that's more talking about permadeath rather than insta-death, right?
Good point. Yes. That's actually correct.
But I mean, that's kind of what they're talking about with the hardcore mode in Diablo too, And the reason I don't play that is because I don't trust the internet, right? If I have a random connection issue or I get disconnected from like BattleNet or something like that for some reason while the rest of my internet works fine, and my guy is in a big group that I'm trying to kill, and I come back and he's dead, I don't want to lose 80, 90, 100 hours worth of work because, BattleNet decided to like take a dump one day and kill me.
I like what Big Block said, which was, Panda, would you rather have clever ridicule for failure?
Clever ridicule.
Yes.
I feel like some early LucasArts games played with this idea already.
Yes, I do too. I feel like we've seen that before. And so where I've seen that in roguelikes. That's where I think I've really seen that.
Yeah. And EverQuest making you run back to loot your corpse. That was the thing in the original Diablo. Matter of fact, all your stuff would fly off of you, and you'd have to go back and pick it up. So a lot of people carried a second set of armor for that reason. Diablo 2 did the same thing. You'd have to run back with a second set of armor and pick up your stuff, but it didn't fly all over the place. So that idea has been played around with, I want to say, a little bit before EverQuest. Mostly, probably the original Diablo, I think, came out before EverQuest. Don't hold me to that because I don't know 100%, but I think it did. So that idea has been played around with a little bit, but again, that's not really like instant death. It's just having to go back and get your loot. And there's modern games that do that too, like 7 Days to Die that my wife adores. If you die, your stuff's in a satchel, right? So you have to make your way back to that satchel and clear everything out around it that might still be there in order to pick up your stuff, and then you have to re-equip all of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty severe punishment to dying in the game. It's either that or recraft all of it. Which is usually just way more work than you want to go through.
Yeah, and this may be a really bad example, but like, so for me, one of the big problems, like, let's say you were teaching someone how to drive a car. Here's how here's the pedal, da 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 da. You put the keys in the car, da 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 da. Okay, now if you were to crash that car in real life, you don't go all the way back and go, here is a car, here's the keys. The key goes in the ignition. You turn the key. That is my problem with games, is that if you're going to build it around death, go back to the beginning. It's like, okay, now I already know 90% of all this stuff, and now I just have to backtrack through all this crap. I'm saying I would love to see a more creative solution to that. And to me, just resetting is just a waste of, like, it's lazy to me, in my opinion. There's better ways of doing that.
What about something like Sifu?
I agree. I don't know that.
Well, okay, Sifu isn't necessarily a one-hit death, but when you die, you age.
You age.
So you have less health, but you can do more damage.
Well,
so it's kind of a give-take kind of thing.
However,
love it.
When you get to there does come that point in which you are too old and have to start over.
Right.
So you crap your pants? It's like press X to crap your pants?
Well, like basically, you can't take any kind of damage whatsoever, and you move to... Well, actually, you get faster.
No. You age out. You age out. There's a point in which you cannot age anymore, where you die.
Megan says, I want to understand what
Sifu,
Panda's saying.
Has already dropped on several consoles and physical.
Yeah, Sifu was my game of the year last year.
Yeah, I haven't dove into Sifu yet. It's one of those I keep thinking I need to pick up and play. I just haven't gotten around to it, but I love the concept of it because it's kind of a beat 'em up, but as you go through each time you have, and the reason you can come back at all is because you have an amulet that acts a little bit like a monkey's paw. You can revive, but it costs you years. Right?
Love it. You're doing something creative.
Right. So they're playing around with this mechanic of death.
Yes.
That you come back, you age a bit, but you gained experience from that death so that you gained a little bit more power and speed at the sacrifice of not being able to take as much damage.
Love it.
Right?
Good.
So those are the kind of things in there that I think that you would like, because it completely plays around with that mechanic, and you can spend certain things.
They are
to get
tearing me
years
apart in the chat.
back.
It's great. I'm sorry, Nick.
Oh no, the chat's having some fun with you.
Yeah, no, God bless them. That's exactly what you should be doing.
In the Switch version. Hey, Retro, how you doing, man? Death loop. If you die, you start over, and the idea is to basically learn enough about the game and where everything's laid out to where you can complete it in one contiguous run. Right. Returnal does something very similar.
Right.
And that's based on there's a Nicolas Cage movie that was kind of based on, and I can't remember what the name of the movie is.
I think you're thinking of Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
No. There was hang on. There was a Nicolas Cage movie where he was able to back up time to.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
I vaguely remember that. That was not one of his more popular films, but
it was not. But it was actually a good movie. It's just not one that you know him for. Hang on.
Yeah.
But
was it knowing?
And Jim nails a lot of like what you're talking about. Roguelite or roguelikes are very similar in that, where you carry over certain things, but you die.
That's what it
was. That's it. Edge of Tomorrow kind of works the same way. He basically every time he dies, you hit the reset button. He goes back, but he's retained enough knowledge on it that he's trying to not make the same mistakes. And it's basically built off the premise of what we're talking about with Insta'Death. He gets killed, he goes back, he has to do better the next run. And it's just like being stuck in a video game loop. Let's see. An older console RPG that did that with aging your protagonist as a penalty. I know Sid Meier's Pirates also had an aging mechanic. I don't think that's what you're talking about. But Sid Meier's Pirates did that. Like you had, but that was more not so much a death cycle thing. That was just however long it took you to be able to do what you needed to do, how many years it took you to do it. You might be too old to be able to beat the last boss and complete the game because you aged throughout the game, right? So that plays with the concept of aging, but not necessarily dying and aging or insta-death, right? Insert X-Men.
Big Block says Panda wants a long side quest where he rehabs his flesh wounds. I will go one step further, and I would say that I also want you to deal with your insurance plan to see if they'll cover the medical costs. And you have to fight and like.
If you die enough, that's it. They cancel your coverage and you're done. And you have to retire poor and broke with all these medical expenses.
Why won't someone make this game?
Because everyone would hate this game. So I guess before we start wrapping things up, because we've got maybe a max of probably about 30 more minutes we should spend on this tonight. If you wanted to keep an insta-death mechanic in a game, what would that game be like, and what would you have the mechanic for?
I think if
like what's the penalty or reward for dying? Would you gain? Would you lose? What changes?
So like,
how do you make it a mechanic that's not just a punishment, but is something that's kind of fun and interesting for the player?
The first thing that comes to mind with the technology we have with AI, procedural generation, all that stuff, like to me, I would make something like that has reincarnation as kind of the running theme of the thing. So a bad example would be you start off, for instance, as, I don't know, an alligator. I'm giving very bad examples, but you'll see where I'm going with this. If you die as this alligator character, you might wait the neck when you die, you might reset, and now you're a fish. The point is, and you obviously translate this to whatever you want, soldiers, whatever. But the idea being is that when you reset, it is a new experience. It is a different control scheme. It is a different environment. You're in the water 1 second as a fish. You're a land animal the next. You know, if it was with people, for instance, maybe you're, if it's an open world game, maybe you wake up as a cop that's out to, protect the public. And if you die, maybe you wake up as the villain that shot you. And you're now a crime lord guy. I like the idea of death means the death of your character. There is finality to it. And then when you restart, it is a new experience. It is something
I feel like there's
different.
Games that have done something similar where when you die, it's like your next generation. But
I want it to be a different experience. And we can do that with procedural generation. We can do that with AI. There's all sorts of things. Like
we can, but how do you balance that? And what's your finite limit of and what's your goal? Is your goal still the same, or does your goal change from life to life? Right?
Well, absolutely, right? It would be like if you're the cop 1 minute, your idea is to stop the criminals. If you're the criminal, your idea is to get the most money and maybe stop the good guys, right? I just like that idea of
eject the game.
Yes.
There you go.
Well, I had said the self-destructing game.
So we got into Mission Impossible the game. This game will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Can I just say I love
or
that
Big
you're...
Block's Quantum Leap. It just disappears. It comes back as another game.
Absolutely. I like that your chat is beating me up as they should. As they should. Good on all.
Honestly, what you're describing is not too much out of the realm of something like Quantum Leap. You either finish a criteria and you leap into another life, or if you die, you leap into another life.
Yes,
right.
I think if you I'm saying play with the mechanic.
And the idea would basically be how many leaps. The better you do in one leap means you have fewer leaps to be able to complete the game. If you die, you have to do more leaps, but you're at least getting a different gameplay experience each time you die.
Sure, that can absolutely be it. I would go.
I love how you have no enthusiasm on this idea that just came
me
bitching you did.
No. I have plenty of enthusiasm. I'm saying I don't like. I'm super hippie. I don't think there even needs to be a reward structure. I don't think there needs to be that. There's this is how you win. I just like the idea that when you lose, you start over as something else and you keep going.
I'm just trying to think of a way to do a cohesive story behind a mechanic like that, right? Because that way you can kind of tell a story while you're doing a mechanic like that and keep it engaging and interesting in that way.
Well,
instead of just Returnal where you die, you wake up and you go back through and you're basically going through the same freaking motions.
Well, I'm saying not.
Just trying to think less.
The opposite of that. And
you're still getting the same. You're still getting the same story, but there's no real change in how you approach it, except for the randomness, right?
Look,
which is the core of a rogue game.
Let's take a zombie game. Let's dumb this idea down. So, let's really dumb it down. Let's make a zombie game, multiplayer game, whatever, where if you die, you might wake up as a zombie, or you might wake up as another leader of some faction of people who are fighting the zombies, whatever. But you might wake up in the body of someone who is a bad aim, is a drunk, whatever it is, and their aim is different, or they're missing an arm, so you can only use weapon X instead of Y. I like the idea of. So in that case, to answer your question, Nick, your goal is the same. If you're a zombie, it's to destroy the humans. If you're a human, it's to destroy the zombies and survive. But that the idea is that every time you wake up, you're from a different perspective with unique parameters with that perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I also feel like you almost need some sort of overarching goal to obtain in this theoretical game, rather than just I spawn into a different zombie that may have different stats. Because if that's your only criteria, we already have games with Insta'Death that are like that. I mean, just look at Broforce. I mean, you die, you have a different character with different stats, a different range, different abilities, and you still have the same objective, right?
Well, yeah, but I think I'm varying it up a little bit more on this dumbed down idea. In that your perspective is entirely changed. Right? If you jump into a zombie, that is very different than the human character. Your goal is very different. How you move is very different. I'm sure like Aliens vs. Predators or some games like that have.
See, this feels like this works better in almost a multiplayer game than it does in like a single player experience. Okay,
I said multiplayer.
Okay. Yeah. I missed that. That's on me.
Okay.
Brad says you just want the headset with a quirky dev mode. You die in the game, you die outside the game. Insta'Death has to matter. When you lose, you lose, sir.
If he dies, he dies.
He dies. Yep, and there's Omega. If he dies, he dies.
Oh, people are having a ball with me tonight.
Cetra's like, dolls are popular in games.
Yes. Look, like I said, I'm the hippie in this group. Like I come from a very experimental background. So for me, winning is kind of a boring concept. Winning what? I don't really understand what that winning is.
I've not seen the movie Brains yet. When I get to see an ending of a game, I mean, certain games I got to the end and I'm
with the story, sure. But if it's a game where you got the high score, okay, great. Now you're still unemployed, living in a basement. Like what did you win?
I mean, you're unemployed and living in a basement. You don't.
That's my effing point.
So I don't really see your point, sir.
I'm saying don't be like me.
Oh, that's fair. Okay.
See? Thank you.
We can do this easily and still play these games, though. No, I have not seen Brain Scan.
That's really familiar. That's a horror movie.
To steal from me, I want to understand what Panda is saying. I really do. The audience has been very long with your ramblings tonight.
As they absolutely should.
Absolutely been pretty brilliant.
No one enjoys getting beat up more than I do, so keep at
it. Growing up, I always wanted an MMO beat 'em up where your dying mate, you had to start the entire level up process over. Gangs would naturally form, and the guys at the top would hate each other. And see, I kind of like the idea too of like if you get killed by something, I kind of like the idea of like the nemesis system, right? I thought Shadow of Mordor. I never played Shadow of Mordor, but I loved this concept of it. Was the was the like the person who killed you would either move up in rank or maybe become a warlord, and you had this weird dynamic on who killed you. Diablo 3 tried to do that with a nemesis system that I didn't think was really all that great. Like if something killed you, it would kind of become your nemesis and start stalking you and stuff. And then I didn't think that was executed nearly as well. The Shadows of Mordor one sounded way smarter of a way to do that, but it also took a lot more work to incorporate that. If a game doesn't have an end or win condition, you eventually reach the realization of why am I playing this? There's no point to keep playing.
But you would have a win condition. It would be whatever that win condition is that you want. Right? So
Well,
if you're
I think you got this as an online just multiplayer game, right? That's what kills most of these games. It's not that they shut down the servers. Most people just get bored of the experience, right? Like people tap out on Overwatch after so many rounds because you're just done, right? The game's not done. The game's around. People are still playing it and having fun with it, but your experience is done because you're just done with it now.
Yes.
Right? It happens with all the Call of Duties, the Warzone.
All those games are just games of tag. That's it. It's just how long can I be entertained by tag?
Right. And so, I mean, I thought with this discussion, we were going more of the narrative approach and how do you function an Insta'Death mechanic into an overarching narrative of a story arc, right? And what does that look like?
Well, we didn't mention narrative.
Not just a multiplayer run around, kill each other, and then, you know, and be switching sides that way. I mean, if you want to do a multiplayer game where when somebody died, they become a zombie and then the players are fewer and the zombies are greater and the players are now playing the zombies, I think that's a cool idea.
That's kind of what I had said.
Right? So that fits in line with what you're talking about.
And I think
that's a cool idea, but I think eventually that would taper off because I feel like eventually that's going to get pretty imbalanced.
Everything will taper off. It's just the idea of all I'm saying. The only thing I'm trying to say here, let me be very clear. First off, if you like those games, you should play them. I am not denying you that. I also don't have a magic button that can take those away from you. I am merely saying I would like to see a little more innovation. If you're going to have the idea of killing something and then your game over and you reset, I would like to see that you do something unique with it. That's all. Panda may just need peyote. That's what it
is. Jim's like, yep, big block nailed it.
That is correct, sir.
What percentage of gamers want narrative over gameplay? I think anybody that's heavily into RPGs wants narrative over gameplay. I think you need the gameplay to at least be proficient enough. Like, I love Mass Effect, but you go back and play that game and the combat is kludgy, right? Using some of the abilities is kludgy. I still love that game because I love the narrative that they're telling me. And so even though some of the gameplay is a little bit kludgy by today's standards.
What does kludgy mean?
A little bit off.
Okay.
Like clunky.
Okay.
And inaccurate or, not refined, right?
Okay.
So, and I say that having just gone back through and played Mass Effect 1. Like even the remastered version of that, a lot of the mechanics are a little awkward to access. They're a little awkward to use.
Yeah, you're not typically playing Mass Effect for the
you're not playing it for the combat. You're playing it for the narrative. And that's what I mean by, to Cypher's point, what percentage of gamers want narrative over gameplay?
I would say like narrative is probably, I mean, I'm pulling this out of my butt. I'd say 30% want story, 70% want gameplay over everything. And yet sadly, and I'm one of the narrative people, but I'd say sadly, us narrative people are destroying most of your games because you're injecting story into almost everything where I don't think they need to. And I don't think they're catering to people like potential you who likes gameplay over narrative, which is sad.
Depending on what it is, I like one over the other, right? If you're going to give me a shooter, I love that you're going to tell me a good story, but if the shooting mechanics are tight and they're not fun, that's what I'm spending the most of my time doing, right? Mass Effect is different. And Mass Effect is different because I have fits and spurts of combat, but I'm getting a lot more story, right?
Well, Mass Effect is like that. But
I like that about Mass Effect. That's one of the instances where I like the narrative over the gameplay. I prefer the narrative be that good.
Andromeda is the reverse of that. It's the gameplay they nailed. The story is terrible.
Yeah,
right. But in like Halo, if the gameplay wasn't good, you're not going to drag me through that story. But the gameplay's tight, right? So the gameplay needs to be focused on first and make that tight and clean. And then if you can build me a good story around it, that just really sells it. Because if you don't have any kind of useful story, even in an FPS, I'm probably not going to stay engaged that long. I may not finish it, right? like Redfall's story had enough dialogue and enough involvement in the characters and how they felt, or made me hate these characters, which was the goal, right? I was legitimately happy to take these characters down. And that's a credit to the storytelling, right? And that drove me through the gameplay, which was honestly subpar compared to other shooters I've played, right? So the narrative really helped pull me through what was a serviceable shooter, but not a good shooter, right? So there's had either one been way better, it would have elevated the experience even further. If you had made the narrative better and kept the gameplay at this level, I would have been way happier with it. If you made the gameplay better and put it up to par with the story, I would have been way happier with it. You know what I mean?
Right. I just don't know how many gamers typically like story. I don't know. I think most people probably kind of hit A to skip in a lot of situations.
See, everybody's making fun of my kludgy remark now.
Yeah, I've never heard of that word before.
I guess it's a Southern thing. I just grew up using it. I don't know why.
They're having a field day with all
They really are. They're absolutely having a blast.
And I will say, and as far as here's the thing. Like, all I've been trying to say with this Insta'Death thing. Look, if you enjoy games where there is a simple task, and I'm not saying that negatively. If here's my task, I do that task, and if I die, I start over and I keep doing that task until I don't die. That's awesome. All I'm saying is I would like to see someone do something a little unique or think outside the box with that gameplay loop. Change that up a little bit, as you guys had said before with that aging game.
Okay.
Like, that's a perfect idea.
Yeah.
Do something unique is all I'm saying.
All right. Well, and I think people don't understand, which I don't get. You've been around long enough. People should get your humor. Because I don't think anybody, I think anybody who is sane knows most of the extreme things you're talking about are unrealistic.
That is correct.
Much like Sonic being better than any Nintendo property that's ever been. So I'm
going to keep twisting the knife on the Atari one. Screw you guys.
But I think that I think you are onto something. Maybe what.
Yes, I'm onto something with the Atari thing.
No, I'm not talking to you. Maybe where that comes into play too is in the hardest difficulty levels, right? So you have your regular difficulty where you don't have necessarily the instant death, but you can choose to play on instant death mode, and then you have all these consequences for dying. Which would be, to your point.
I feel that there's already some games that kind of do that concept, right? Or have severe punishments or almost one-hit kills for things where you would normally be a more balanced experience. But it's for the very, very difficult, high difficulty settings, right?
Right, but beyond so there's consequences to the one-hit kill. In those modes, the one-hit kill still takes you back to the checkpoint. To Panda's point, have some other kind of consequence to playing on that
you make losing part of the experience. Like I think what you had said before, that game where you're age, like you're using that idea of if I lose, X happens, and it's a different experience. You're using that as a gameplay mechanic. It's not just slapping someone on the wrist. You did wrong.
Yeah,
start over.
There's been a few games that have done that well, but it's not used enough. I feel like there's room to explore that concept more. Like the multiplayer one where you die and you turn into a zombie, or you die and you turn into a werewolf or a vampire or whatever, and it starts skewing it so the remaining players have to find a way to kind of rally up and be able to thin things down, and they're basically finding a battle of attrition, right? It's either how long can you survive and how many zombies do you kill, or can you manage to clear over those overwhelming odds, right? And that kind of thing. So, and at that case, if you had like one clever zombie player in that game that could that gets down to like 2, maybe 3 people on their side, and there's like 8 or 10 on the other side, if he can manage to get a couple of quick kills, he can like really turn the tide of the whole thing back in his favor. Because the only way that anybody comes back into the game is as a zombie. When you're dead as a zombie, you're done. That's the end of your round, right? So I think something like that would work in a multiplayer facet, right? And I think you could play with those kinds of ideas like Sifu's played with it, right? Deathloop's played with it pretty effectively. Games like that where the narrative is focused around this kind of like looping contingency, and things change a little bit each time you go through it, or your character changes a little bit. Maybe they have this handicap, maybe they have this new perk that unlocks, maybe because you ran into something or you got to this point, you can carry over like an extra perk that you couldn't carry before. The roguelikes experiment with a lot of that stuff already in that kind of concept. So it's not like those concepts aren't out there in the field.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's just bringing them more, because roguelikes tend to outside of Hades that tried to bring a narrative, but also brought too much randomness from my particular taste. Did a good job of trying to bring you this cohesive story arc. Right?
You actually described a game that came out in 2013 called Rogue Legacy, which was I played it back in the original Xbox One. It was a platformer, just a 2D scrolling platformer, but when you died, you transfer all of your remaining stats to a randomly generated like heir, so your sire, whoever your son, and they have their own unique characteristics and abilities. And
well, that's great. There you go.
And see, Jim says Demon Souls plays around with that with a world tenacity mechanic, because if you lose your body in Demon Souls, it taints the world, right? So
well, I like what Jim said.
The world leans more towards dark, which makes the game harder still than it already is, which is kind of ridiculous. But you also get better loot, right? So there's an argument to be made to go either full white or full black and tenacity, and how you want to play that in the way in the game. Scepter also mentioned Dead Cells, which I bought but I haven't messed with. That I think plays around with some of that concept.
Jim had said there's a game I've seen where you have to die to progress. Your next time through, you can use your corpse to help you overcome obstacles and challenges. If he's not kidding, then again, that is doing something a little outside the box.
I think there is something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a very
Al says
cool...
there's some roguelikes that record everything you do, including not allowing you to save your character stats as a troll move. Call of Duty apparently had a Halloween mode where a few people were zombies. As they kill people, they turn them, but if you die as a zombie, you're done. It also has a mechanic where you could heal yourself. So see, there's been some playing around with that concept.
I think that's great.
For certain things. So yeah, developers have thought of and messed around with that idea. It's just either we're not noticing it, or it's not as prevalent as it could be in some.
Well, it's not going to be a mainstream. I think this is where you need indies. I mean, as you can see from the chat, they're not really into outside of the norm, which is fine. I think that's a very small group that likes that, and that's why it'd be great to see indies try to think a little bit outside the box.
And that's honestly why I was curious about indies on your conversation yesterday, because I'm like, without the indie industry the way we are today, because I feel like even if you go full physical, people still start to play it safe, right? And only people really for the people that are hungry, that are trying to make their mark, and that's more the indie developers that are going to throw those ideas out there, right? But they have to be able to do it on a budget and with a small crew and stuff like that. So being able to make stuff like that accessible to be able to get the game out there, which currently only works in our world today because of digital distribution, right? That's the only reason it works at all. It's the only reason the indie scene's gotten as big, is because digital distribution got as good as it was, that they can get these ideas out there now.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's actually that's been one of my leading arguments for digital. Like when I'm trying to counter argument myself, I always try to say that same thing. Yeah.
So I think at this point we probably need to start wrapping up for the night. Any last thoughts, Mike?
In the grand scheme of things, I don't have a kind of a dog in the fight on Insta'Death, but I do think that some of the ideas around
That's not a hot take.
That's not a hot take. That's just fact.
That's pretty accurate.
No, it's not right. I think some of the ideas on how to handle it are pretty sound, and again, there are games that do it, and there are games that Sifu is a game that I really enjoy. But I don't know. I don't have a specific strong feeling on it one way or another.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're alone on that particular topic. I think it is an experimental. The only way to make it work, in my opinion, is to do something a little experimental. And experimental typically is not by its nature, is not a mainstream idea. So
I think it gets easier to become mainstream now, and this will kind of builds on to the way we consume media now, because I think YouTubers would take to games like that, right?
Oh, sure.
You get a hand of like one semi-popular YouTuber, you send him a key, and he plays it and starts liking it, and then boom, it almost immediately becomes mainstream because other streamers will start playing off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, then you have tons of people finding out about this game, and it becomes another one of those indie darling games. You see it all the time with YouTube now. Right. That's why the indie scene is actually starting to get easier to develop, because if you just send out a few keys to a couple of YouTubers to get their interest, maybe one or two small ones, one or two bigger ones, and then like the really big ones start seeing it, and then they're like snapping it up. And before you know it, it's like another Among Us that was a nothing game in like 2018. And then the pandemic hit, and people were looking for ways to engage with each other, found the game again, and all of a sudden it exploded for like 3 years.
Right.
And now it's become like sus is now a thing, right? That's now part of like slang that kind of really got pushed because of Among Us, right? And stuff like that. So it's kind of become, and there's all sorts of memes and stuff regarded to it now. So it's kind of become part of pop culture because streamers took it on during a time where they were struggling to find something where they could engage with their audience and each other effectively. So I think if you do some stuff like that with a game like that, you could really get it to take off. And then you're going to see more ways of that being used, right? Mm-hmm. Because anything that becomes popular, the AAA scene's going to adopt it in some manner, right? If it shows itself to be effective enough, that's when they're going to take to it. Because now it's safe, right? And they don't have to worry about their stockholders getting pissed because you did some sort of weird experimental game. It's now proven mechanically that people want this kind of experience. See, Rab saying, I was just trying to think of broader narrative shifts than just scrolling on the faction.
I agree with him.
More of a good and evil, a great mechanic. Would love to see it expanded, especially now with AI. And I think I think there's a good way to do that. I mean, for my take on this, I feel like there's a time and a place for an instant death mechanic in any game, even a modern game, depending on the right scenario, because it makes sense narratively, it makes sense for the world. It makes sense in the way the game is built, right? Do I think it needs to be a mainstay where you just get reset and kind of kicked back? I think we're kind of past that unless you're just looking for that kind of challenge. If you're heavily into shooters, you're used to that kind of challenge. Later, Jim. Thanks for popping by, man. And you're looking for that kind of challenge. I'm glad these games are there for the people that want those hardcore challenges, right? Or want to play things at the difficulty levels where those things are there. I do agree with you guys that I think there's more fun to be had with those kinds of mechanics, that you could really do something clever and unique with it. I actually like the idea of a Quantum Leap game where if you're doing badly, like you'd have to do more loops, or the loops get more difficult because you've been doing poorly. But if you're doing better, you kind of complete the game quicker, and it's, you get better endings depending on how you perform in each loop, right? As you go from like life to life, and you have different objectives there, right? I think that would be a fun I think that's a fun game that just kind of needs to be made.
What kind of game would it be? And what I mean by that is, be a platformer? Would it be a shooter? Would it be?
I think you could do a couple different game types with it, so long as you gave it a pretty solid foundation, right? I mean, if you popped into the life of a chef, maybe you're doing like a cooking simulator at one point, right? And you have a narrative outside of that you have to handle. Maybe you're a firefighter one time. And, maybe it's just kind of like a life simulator game where you've got a couple of different simulations on it. You could make it super broad in that. You'd have to have some that add more common tie-ins and mechanics. Otherwise, you just have like a kludgy mess of mini games, right?
Sure. Well, you say kludgy again.
Yeah, well, I like that word.
Well,
what is it based from?
I don't know. I just remember hearing as a kid. I'm from the South. I just remember hearing it.
Oh, okay.
What? Oh, kludgy?
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard that before. That's not necessarily a Southern word. It's
Is it like wonky?
Yeah, kind of.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Al says there's an Insta game that's all Insta'Death that touches on several genres from the shooter to platformer to racing.
That sounds awesome to me.
I want to see an Insta'Death racing game. That'd be how would you do that?
What a racing game?
Yeah. You hit the wall and your driver died and that's it.
Yeah,
I think it would depend on how the kind of crash, right? Because there's certain crashes that should probably kill your racer. I mean, that happens in real life, depending on how bad the crash is. I mean, usually the roll cages and stuff are enough that you generally don't die, but your car's out of the race.
True.
But I don't know. That's my last take on it. Does anybody have anything else that they want to add before we go into end tonight?
No, but it's been fun and even more fun to watch the chat.
Just watch the chat. Just go all over my slang and to rip into you on Insta'Death has just been
dude, it reminds me of college
brilliant.
because I was known as like the really heady experimental guy, who was always trying to just think of these, nutty things, and everyone wanted to make their, Avengers movies. Some people like me, we don't like those Avengers movies. We want to kind of try and do something a little different, even if it's really weird and stuff like that. Because I've seen the Avengers, I've seen it 10,000 different ways, and I think I'd like to see this industry grow. The video game industry, in my opinion, is really young, and there's a lot more room to grow. I think right now we're like in the 30s. If you were to compare it to film, we're like in the 1930s. So there's way more to do. And I would like to get out of this mindset of, well, there's this one thing that we've had and let's just stay there because that's what makes sense. I think you need some people to think a little bit outside the box. And those first initial ideas are going to sound crazy and stupid and weird, but that's how you get to something hopefully mainstream in a different way.
Honestly, I feel like all these ideas are kind of on the table, and that's why I like the indie scene. Was I don't dip into it as much right now as I was. I feel like that's where a lot of this is going because a lot of the rest of the industry has kind of gotten risk averse, right? It's matured to the point to where now they have all these investors and stuff like that going on, and they need to protect the bottom line in order to kind of keep their company afloat and to keep their shareholders involved. And it kind of puts things into a bit of a rut. And that's why you have a lot of these smaller teams that are trying to make their mark by coming up with this next neat thing, right? And some of those are kind of leaning on similar ideas too, yeah, but there's still some stuff like the fun, silly stuff like Rain on My Parade, where you have like different addresses and you're playing a rain cloud, right? It's just a silly, fun idea, right?
Oh, right now we live in a great era of people thinking outside the box.
Right.
We definitely do.
So you've got those experiences that are there. You have to go looking for them sometimes, or you have to be exposed to them by the right person in order to be able to find them. But there's a lot of them out there.
100%.
So 100%. I feel like those ideas are there. We haven't quite hit where we're at now with the movie scene, where it feels like you've got a couple of movies a year that are trying to do something a little bit different or a little bit deeper.
Well, you don't have them in your mass market, but they exist outside of that.
Yeah, they do. But the problem is that much like movies, a certain formula sells.
Sure, and they should. Like, I'm not. I mean, very clear.
No,
I am not knocking a main. Like, if someone loves,
nor am I.
You love a mainstream. If you love the Avengers of whatever that is in video games, awesome, man. I hope you get more of that. Like, I don't sit on a pretentious. I'm not looking at it pretentiously. I'm just saying for the rest of us who do want to try and see what we can do in this art medium, I would like to see us try some things new. And I think Insta'Death is a perfect place to do something new, because it's the idea of, if the idea is I'm going to penalize you by restarting something, to me that is so lazy, where there's so many cool things you could probably do if you sat down for more than 5 minutes and said, hey, what can we do instead of just restart something?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Literally, that's all I'm saying.
And again, I feel like some things have done that and some things have not done that well. It just depends on what it is. But I mean, we could continue discussion again, because I think permadeath has its place in there too. And how do you handle permadeath?
Sure.
Right. So I feel like that's a similar topic that has enough meat in it in a different way that you could kind of blend this and that conversation and come up with something else kind of cool too. Maybe we'll do that another day. But for right now, I think we're going to go ahead and sign off and wrap up here, guys. Thank you, everybody who came in and hung out with us and kind of made fun out of us for 2 hours. It's a blast as always. Chat. It's always awesome having you guys in chat. So thank you guys so much for popping in.
This was actually a lot of fun tonight. Like,
no, this
this was a lot of fun.
The chat was popping.
I want to thank the chat for making this actually. Yeah, I love this kind of stuff.
They were both. I was afraid we were going to be like 30-40 minutes and then be like, But the chat was into it and doing what they do, and it kept the idea going.
As
just
they
making
should,
fun of us too. So that's great.
As they should. As they should.
So thank you guys as always.
The chat does move us in a direction somehow.
They do it intentionally. I feel like sometimes they're halfway just going, how many times can we derail them tonight? And it becomes a drinking game.
Well,
and I feel like they're going to get alcohol poisoning because it's not hard to derail us.
Well, the other thing too is they get tired of what we're talking about. And like, we're going to make them talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like that happens a lot.
The chat does the ultimate Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah. They boost the stream. They absolutely do. So. Al says there's one last comment here. At some point, the indie market will become saturated, and conventions that everyone adheres to will rise again. Well, and I can kind of see that to an extent, but I think we're ways off from that.
It's starting though, because everybody's trying to make a 16-bit looking platformer now.
Well, I mean, it was for a while it was Metroidvanias, and now it's roguelikes, and they're kind of, as one person hits on something, it's kind of like the third party toy market, right? Where one person will make one character figure, and then next thing you know, there's like 7 others that pop up from like different vendors because they all kind of got the idea at the same time, or they played off of each other's ideas. The video game market, and even to an extent movies, do the same thing. So yeah, it works that way. It happens. But we're going to get out of here, guys. Thank you guys again for hanging out with us. It was awesome. Make sure to check out these guys' channels. I don't think I could get it saved tonight in the description. I'll probably go back and fix that post when I can. I don't know. For some reason tonight it told me it saved, and then when I went to go back from the page, it said, "Do you want to discard your changes every time?" So I couldn't quite fix it when I put it in there.
Permadeath.
It's permadeath or Insta'Death or whatever. We're perma-Insta'Deathing tonight. That's okay.
By the way, before you wrap up, a million years ago, someone gave me a little stab that was so funny. It was something that said, "If you die in a game, it should." It should upload your credit card to the black market, and I thought
I saw that comment. I forgot to pull that one out. That was great.
I missed that one. Oh, that sounds.
Oh man, it was. Oh, they were so good tonight. It's so good.
Why can't we have that?
Oh my gosh,
that's all I'm saying.
All right, guys, no uploading my credit card information. I do that enough. Night and happy gaming.
Good night, everyone. Play on, gamers.